The afternoon sun poured over tranquil oaks like warm honey, turning the perfectly manicured lawns into a carpet of impossible green. Every blade exactly 2.5 inches tall, because Barbara Thompson, our HOA president, had measured them herself with that little silver ruler she kept clipped to her belt like a sheriff's badge. I, Riley Voss, 29 years old, stepped out of my car in the circular drive of the clubhouse, emerald silk dress catching the light like a blade. My heart hammered, but my shoulders stayed square. This was supposed to be the annual Grand Summer Gala, open to every homeowner who paid the dues that kept the fountains bubbling and the hedges trimmed. Barbara spotted me before I even reached the double doors. She was holding court under the white-columned portico, clipboard in one hand, fake smile stretched across her face like plastic wrap. The moment her eyes locked on mine, the smile curdled. She excused herself from a cluster of golf shirt husbands, strode straight at me, and didn't bother lowering her voice. Riley, turn around and go home. You don't belong here. Her fingers clamped my upper arm exactly the way they had last month when she'd written me up for excessive holiday lighting, because my porch had 4 string lights instead of 3. I didn't yank away. I simply looked past her to the young security guy hovering by the guest table. You might want to check the list again. My voice stayed even. The same tone I used when a tech CEO's launch was imploding and I had 30 seconds to reroute the entire AV system. The guard flipped the leather binder. His eyes slid down the page, stopped, and his throat bobbed twice. Barbara's grip tightened until I felt her manicure through the silk. Then she read the 3 names printed under mine, and every drop of color drained from her face like someone had pulled the plug. My name is Riley Voss. I own Valora Access Events. I coordinate 7-figure galas for people who actually matter. But in Tranquil Oaks, I was the resident who didn't fit the aesthetic, the one who traveled too much, whose lawn sometimes went a day over the watering schedule because I was in D.C., closing a deal, whose single potted lemon tree on the patio was apparently an eyesore. Barbara had spent 2 years building a file on me thicker than the HOA covenants themselves. And tonight she had decided the Grand Summer Gala, 200 residents, live band, open bar, the whole 6-figure spectacle was suddenly intimate and for contributors only. Translation, anyone who had ever questioned her was erased. I had the invitation in my clutch. Thick cream stock, embossed seal of the vice president's family, the Mercers, the ones actually footing half the bill this year because Barbara's budget had mysteriously run short. I slid it across the check-in table to Kelsey, the poor college kid working the desk. Riley Voss, I said calmly. Barbara snapped. She is not on the list. She is trespassing. Kelsey's fingers trembled as she turned pages. Main list. No, Riley. Then the addendum. Her breath caught. She looked up at me with something that was no longer pity. It was awe. Senator Lee Porter, she read aloud, voice barely above a whisper. Grayson Holt of Horizon Echo Media. Dr. Naomi Blake of the Quiet Kids podcast. Barbara went rigid. She snatched the binder, shoved her face so close the pages fogged. She found the names. Her hand on my arm went slack. The color that had drained earlier flooded back in ugly blotches. Around us, the polite lobby murmurs died. Phones started coming out. The valet outside snapped to attention as a black sedan with government plates glided up, followed by a Tesla that cost more than most houses on our street. Senator Lee Porter stepped out first, silver hair gleaming, lavender suit radiating authority. She scanned the crowd, spotted me, and her face broke into a genuine smile. There you are, kiddo. She linked her arm through mine like we did this every Sunday. Grayson Holt adjusted his cuffs, looking amused at the opulence. You undersold this little neighborhood party. Riley, I was expecting folding chairs and a cooler of beer. Dr. Naomi Blake simply gave me that quiet, knowing not that said everything was going to be fine. Barbara stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. She tried the big laugh she used at board meetings. A misunderstanding. Our Riley here travels so much we just assumed. Senator Porter cut her off with a polite but arctic smile. We were distressed to hear one of your own homeowners wasn't invited. It seemed like such a terrible oversight. The word "not invited" rippled through the lobby like a stone dropped in still water. Whispers turned into gasps. They really excluded Riley? That's his sister. Wait. That's our neighbor. The narrative Barbara had spent weeks crafting, just an intimate gathering for true community members, was bleeding out on the marble floor. I had spent the last 3 months becoming the person they could never erase. But to understand how I got here, we have to go back. Back to the phone call, where Barbara Thompson finally said out loud what the board had always believed. Some residents were assets, and some were liabilities, and I was the fine print. Tranquil Oaks had always felt like a family, a dysfunctional one. Barbara was the loud, proud mother who decided whose grass was green enough, whose holiday lights were festive enough, whose opinions were welcome enough. I was the quiet kid who rearranged the rules in her head the way I used to rearrange pantry shelves as a teenager, methodical, invisible, necessary. While Barbara's son and her favorite neighbors got waivers for everything from extra parking to private parties. I got citations for visual clutter because my mailbox had a small American flag sticker. My business took me all over the country. I planned fundraisers that raised millions while Barbara planned potlucks that raised complaints. Yet every time I came home, there was another letter in my mailbox. $150 for non-compliant landscaping, $200 for excessive vehicle and driveway, $75 for failure to submit paint sample. I paid them. I smiled. I never raised my voice because I was building something bigger than lawn gnomes and covenant spreadsheets. I was building a network of people who saw me. People like Senator Porter, who once watched me reroute a crash sound system and placate angry donors without ever losing my cool. People like Grayson, who owed me for saving his $50 million launch. People like Naomi, whose entire podcast was about invisible children, kids who grew up in the shadow of a golden sibling. Or in my case, a golden community where only certain lawns mattered. 3 months ago, Barbara had called me herself. Her voice syrupy sweet. Riley, honey, the gala is going to be so intimate this year. Just the closest contributors. We have to keep it small. You understand? The word intimate landed like a slap. I asked the question directly. Am I included? The silence that followed told me everything. Then her husband, board treasurer, took the phone. Let's be rational. You're never here. This event is for the people who have been part of the community day in and day out. I heard her son laughing in the background. Tell her she's better backstage anyway. I hung up. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and started screenshotting every public post Barbara had made. So proud to keep our gala intimate for real families. Hard to keep it small, but we want it just for our inner circle. The hypocrisy was so thick you could spread it on toast. Then a neighbor, sweet old mister Daryl, who used to pay me $10 to edge his lawn, bumped into me at the grocery store. So excited for the gala. Barbara says it's the biggest event Tranquil Oaks has ever seen. When I quietly told him I wasn't invited, his face collapsed into pity. That look, that secondhand shame, was the final straw. That night, I opened my rainy day contacts. The people who had once said, if you ever need anything. I wrote 3 careful emails. Not begging, not dramatic, just honest. I'm asking for witnesses. 3 hours of your time so that when I walk into that room, I am not alone. Senator Porter called back in 10 minutes. Voice like ice. That is not intimate. Riley, that is calculated erasure. Send me the details. Grayson texted back in 30 seconds. I'm in. People at me love a good story. Naomi's voice on the phone was gentle but firm. You're not asking for revenge. You're asking for reality to be witnessed. Of course I'll be there. While I waited for the RSVPs, I did what I do best, research. I called an old friend who now worked in banking. Did the HOA ever set up any special accounts in my name for dues credits or anything? She found it. A custodial fund Barbara had quietly created from excess assessments years ago, money that should have gone back to residents. By the time I turned 29, it was worth over $65,000. Then, the same month Barbara's son launched his failed boutique subscription box business. The entire amount vanished in a single wire transfer. Memo line, community investment. Destination, her son's LLC. Barbara had used my dues, our dues, to fund her Golden Boys flop and lied to the entire board about budget shortfalls. She had even listed Senator Porter as a pending host committee member on investor packets without permission, using the senator's name to lure money. I didn't plan to expose that tonight. Not yet. Tonight was about walking through the door they had slammed in my face. Back in the lobby, the atmosphere had shifted from polite to electric. Kelsey was on the radio whispering, "We have VIPs. Senator Porter is here." The general manager, Alan Henderson, came speedwalking, face pale. "Senator, Mr. Holt, Dr. Blake, welcome. Anything you need. We can adjust seating. Anything at all." Barbara's last pathetic bit of control was slipping. She lunged forward again, fingers digging back into my arm. "You think dragging celebrities here embarrasses me? This is our community. You're ruining the gala." I looked her dead in the eye. "I'm here to attend my neighborhood event. If that embarrasses you, that's your problem." The manager froze. Senator Porter raised one elegant hand. "No need to adjust anything. We sit wherever Riley sits." Alan's professional smile twitched. He knew exactly where Riley Voss was supposed to be seated, table 23, shoved against the service corridor next to the bathrooms. The overflow spot for people who didn't matter. He couldn't put a United States senator and a media mogul there. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Barbara vibrated with rage. She yanked me into the alcove behind the sad potted fern. Voice of venomous hiss. "You think this is clever? You've ruined everything. Everyone is here to celebrate community harmony, not watch your pathetic sideshow." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I'm not here for a show. I'm here because I paid the same dues as everyone else. If that bothers you, maybe the problem isn't me. Behind us, Rachel Mercer, the vice president's daughter and the one who had quietly slipped me the addendum invite, stepped forward in her flowing gala dress. Her eyes locked on Barbara's hand still clamped on my arm. "Let's be clear," she said, voice ringing across the lobby. "Senator Porter, Mr. Holt, and Dr. Blake are my guests as much as Riley's. The Mercer family invited them. If anyone asks, the vice president's family invited them." Barbara and her son, standing in the doorway looking like they'd been electrocuted, were speechless. The coordinator's bell chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony, excuse me, the gala program is about to begin. Please proceed to the garden terrace." We were swept outside into the blinding Tennessee, no, California, sun. The garden was magazine perfect, white chairs on emerald lawn, fairy lights in the oaks, archway dripping with roses. But the air crackled like a courtroom. A young usher, eyes wide with new respect, led us down the center aisle, past Barbara's golf buddies, past her inner circle friends, straight to the front row on the honor side. For chairs angled perfectly. Senator Lee, Grayson, Naomi, and I sat as if this was exactly where we belonged. 200 pairs of eyes bored into the back of my head. I didn't turn around. The program began. Barbara's son was getting some ridiculous community spirit award. She stood at the podium, voice trembling with forced warmth. "We've always believed in our residents, especially those who sacrifice and contribute." She looked straight at her son. "We funded those dreams no matter what it cost." The words landed like lead. I thought of the $65,000. I thought of my own business built on coffee shop shifts and zero help. A woman behind me leaned over and whispered to her husband, "Wait, wasn't that money from the special assessment we all paid?" The dots were connecting. During cocktail hour, the migration started. First, Barbara's golf buddies, drawn like moths to Senator Porter. "Senator, I had no idea you were friends with Barbara." Lee's smile was polite steel. "Oh, Barbara and I aren't acquainted. I'm here for Riley. She coordinates events I actually trust." The man's face went blank. "Riley." Later, a younger group surrounded Grayson. "Mr. Holt, are you a friend of Barbara's son?" Grayson laughed, dry and sharp. "Never met the guy. I'm here for Riley. She saved my company from a launch that would have cost $50 million. When she asks for a +1, you show up." Mouths dropped open. Our Riley. Every conversation chipped away at the story Barbara had sold for years. That I was the problem resident. The one who didn't contribute. The one who belonged backstage. Meanwhile, at the head table, Barbara's smile was a rigid grimace. Her son was laughing too loud, spinning his date aggressively on the dance floor, raising glasses every 5 minutes. He looked small. He looked fake. My phone buzzed. A text from a bridesmaid. No, from a neighbor who had been at the planning committee. "I don't know what you did, but everyone is talking about you. And for the first time, it doesn't sound like pity. Your HOA president looks like she's going to be sick. This is the greatest gala I've ever been to." I slipped out to the quiet balcony for one breath of clean air. The hills rolled dark and calm. Inside, the music faded for the intermission. When I stepped back in, Tom Mercer, Rachel's father, was walking straight to Barbara's table. He leaned down, whispered something. Barbara's face went ashen. Senator Porter stood smoothly and intercepted them. "I believe I should be part of this discussion." The three disappeared behind a velvet curtain near the wine cellar. I edged closer. Naomi touched my elbow. "Not yet. This part isn't for you. This is the consequence." Behind the curtain, voices rose. Tom Mercer's growl. "And that is the file. We just learned your entire Community First Act was financed with the special assessment fund you stole from residents, including Riley." A thick envelope slapped against the chest. "That's not just bad budgeting, Barbara. That's character." Then Senator Porter's voice, quiet and lethal. "You weren't the college type because you never gave her the option. You took the choice from her. You took the money from her. And you used my name without permission to lure investors for your son's flop." The curtain opened. Barbara stumbled out, looking 10 years older. She avoided my eyes and made a beeline for the bar, downing a whiskey in one swallow. Rachel, watching from the dance floor, rushed her father. He handed her the envelope. "You need to read this." Rachel tore it open in the foyer. I watched her body go rigid, hand fly to her mouth. Her new husband, Barbara's golden boy son, followed. Their voices carried. Rachel's fury. "You knew. You knew he paid for your business with our neighbor's money." His defense cracked. "So what if I did? It was just sitting there. Riley wasn't going to use it. She's not the community type. She's good with organizing things." The slap echoed like a gunshot. Rachel returned white-faced but dry-eyed. She walked past the head table, past her father-in-law, and sat between her parents. The band started again, but the cheerful music felt obscene. The DJ announced speeches. The best man, Barbara's son's drunk college buddy, stumbled up. Barbara and her family have always stood right behind him, supporting every dream, no matter what it cost. The room went dead silent. Grayson covered his mouth, shoulders shaking with silent laughter. Then Barbara stood for the proud president's speech. She took the mic, voice thick. "We've always believed in all our residents." She emphasized all, like a benevolent dictator. She was rebuilding the lie brick by brick. Rachel stood up, calm and chilling. She walked to the DJ booth, whispered, took a second mic. "Before we keep talking about community sacrifices, there's something this entire room should know." Every head turned. Rachel's voice was forged steel. I was told Riley was difficult. Too busy. Not the community type. I was told she chose not to come. I found out it was a lie. She was deliberately excluded. The invitation that actually reached her came from my family, because we were horrified. She looked at me. Riley, I'm so sorry for what this board did to you. She held the mic out to me. I stood, legs shaking but voice clear. For those who haven't met me, I'm Riley Voss. I run Valora Access events. I build conferences and galas for organizations I respect. It is not organizing things. It is hard, meticulous work, and I'm proud of it. I look straight at Barbara. And I want to thank my guests, Senator Lee Porter, Grayson Holt, Dr. Naomi Blake. They didn't come as public figures. They came as my friends. They're the community I chose. I handed the mic back. Senator Porter raised her glass. To Riley Voss, a woman of unparalleled integrity. Grayson, she is the calmest person in a crisis I've ever met. Naomi, the most powerful thing you can do is show up as yourself. We see you. The clink of their glasses was the loudest sound in the room. Barbara lunged for her own mic. If at any time we made you feel neglected, we are so sorry. We've always been proud of all residents. She was gaslighting in real time. I picked up my clutch. I'm ready to go. We stood as one. We turned our backs on Barbara, who was still sputtering into the live microphone. We walked out. In the lobby, Gala, my neighbor who had become an unlikely ally, hugged me fiercely. That was the single most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. Rachel ran after us. Thank you for being so strong. Under the portico, the valet pulled the senator's car. Barbara came running, drunken shuffle. Mother and son trailing behind. She smelled of whiskey and fear. You can't just leave. You embarrass me in front of everyone. You ruined the gala. You ruined me. I looked at her, the giant of neighborhood covenants. The woman whose opinion had once been weather to me. She was just a small, red-faced, terrified woman now. No, Barbara, I didn't embarrass you. I just stopped helping you hide the truth. I got in a car. The door closed, shutting out the faint music, shutting out the sight of Barbara standing alone in the driveway. As we pulled away, I looked back one last time. The three of them, Barbara, her son, her loyal treasurer, stood under the yellow lights, looking small, looking lost, looking, for the first time, truly invisible, and I felt nothing but free. The next morning, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Screenshots of Barbara's old posts about intimate gatherings circulated like wildfire. Someone posted the bank records, redacted but clear enough. The special assessment fund. The wire transfer. The fake, pending host, listing with Senator Porter's name. By noon, the board had called an emergency meeting. By evening, Barbara had voluntarily stepped down for personal reasons. Her son quietly listed his house. The Mercers proposed new bylaws. No more secret funds. No more selective enforcement. Every resident gets a voice. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply sat on my patio, flag stickers still in the mailbox, lemon tree still in its pot, and drank coffee while the sun rose over lawns that no longer felt like battlegrounds. My phone buzzed with new client requests. A nonprofit in D.C. wanted me for their next gala. Grayson texted, "Next time you need witnesses, just say the word. And maybe invite me to something that isn't a war zone." Naomi left a voice note. "You showed up as yourself. That was enough." Mr. Daryl stopped by later, carrying a small potted plant. "For your porch," he said, eyes twinkling. "No citation this time. I hope." We laughed. Real laughter. The kind that comes when the weight you carried for years finally lifts and you realize you were never the problem. Barbara tried one last text. A single line, "I hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. I wasn't happy in the petty, vengeful way she meant. I was free, and freedom tasted better than any six-figure gala. Weeks later, the new board sent every homeowner a letter. We apologize for past selective enforcement. Moving forward, Tranquil Oaks will be a community where every voice matters. Attached was a refund check for the misused assessment, my portion plus interest. I deposited it, then wired half to a local scholarship fund for kids who weren't the college type. The other half paid for new string lights, 5 strands this time. Let them measure. The lemon tree grew taller. The flag stayed. And every time I drove past the clubhouse, I smiled at the new plaque by the entrance, dedicated to transparency and inclusion. Thanks to the residents who showed up. They never named me. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. Sometimes new residents ask why the HOA meetings are now recorded and open to all. I tell them the short version. One woman refused to stay invisible. I tell them a long version only if they buy me coffee. Because the real story isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when the people who built the stage finally step into the spotlight. I still travel. I still plan impossible events. But now when I come home to Tranquil Oaks, the lawns look greener. Not because they're mowed to regulation, but because no one is measuring them with fear. Barbara's old clipboard is gone. The silver ruler is probably in a drawer somewhere, collecting dust. And every summer the grand gala is bigger, louder, messier, and open to everyone who pays the dues and shows up as themselves. That's the lesson the neighborhood finally learned. You can write all the covenants you want. You can measure every blade of grass. But you cannot erase a resident who decides, quietly and completely, that she belongs. Because when she walks in with witnesses who see her, the entire story changes. The power flips, and the Karen who tried to keep her out ends up the one standing alone in the driveway, watching the car pull away. I kept the emerald dress. It still hangs in my closet. Sometimes I pull it out and run my fingers over the silk. It doesn't feel like armor anymore. It feels like proof. Proof that I walked through the door they tried to lock. Proof that I brought the light with me. And proof that, in the end, the only thing that truly gets erased is the lie. So if you're listening to this and you live in an HOA that feels a little too controlling, a little too petty, remember Riley Voss. Remember that the clipboard is just plastic. The ruler is just metal. The real power is the one you carry when you stop asking for permission to exist. Thank you for listening to my story. Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know where you're hearing this. And if this tale of HOA justice made you smile, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with every neighbor who's ever received a ridiculous fine. Because the next time a Karen tries to erase you, you'll already know exactly how the story ends, with you in the front row, your real community beside you, and the person who tried to ban you watching from the sidelines. Finally, completely, and satisfyingly invisible.